Great,
And we're recording.
Welcome, everyone, to our third annual Substance Use and Addiction Research Open House. My name is Mandy Owens. I'm an assistant professor with the Addictions, Drug, and Alcohol Institute here at the University of Washington. That's ADAI. We have a lot of acronyms, but we'll try to spell them out and keep folks going. And so happy to have you here with us. So as you saw, we will be recording the presentations. I think most folks are probably used to Zoom at this point, but just as a reminder, please keep yourself on mute during presentations, but feel free to type questions into the chat box. We'll get to them as we can, or as we'll talk about here in a second, we'll have an opportunity for breakout rooms for each of the different centers in case folks want to follow up. I do want to begin by acknowledging that as we are gathering here today, we are on the ancestral homelands of the indigenous peoples who have lived on these lands since time immemorial. Please join us in expressing our deepest respect and gratitude for our indigenous neighbors. So we have a few goals that we hope to share with you all today. The first is we really do want to just inspire students to join the substance use and addictions research field. We're all in this field because we think it is incredibly interesting and meaningful and worthwhile, and especially in this time where substance use has, there are multiple epidemics going on at one time. We really need the best workforce that we can get out there helping us. And we know that broadening our reach to students in different majors and varying backgrounds are going to help us best prepare for that fight and to help enrich the research field around substance use and addictions. We also know from research that by having diverse opinions and perspectives, all working on such a complex issue as substance use, that is most likely to make sure that we can move forward in the field and start tackling this very difficult subject and problem that affects nearly every one of us today. And so in addition to inspiring and hopefully broadening reach, we hope to also connect you all with scientists here at the University of Washington. I know sometimes it can be kind of intimidating to reach out to faculty or researchers. And so hopefully through this kind of venue, you would feel more comfortable, especially reaching out to folks on here. I know that I started out as an undergraduate research assistant at the University of Washington, and I was reaching out to a faculty member and who worked in substance use research. We're not going to count how many years ago that was, but that really was integral in helping me to move along throughout my career to where I am today. So our outline for our time today. So I'm going to start with a brief presentation about what kinds of research opportunities are there at University of Washington. And then we will hear from a trainee's perspective to talk about their different opportunities that they have sought out in terms of research, both at University of Washington as well as other institutions across the country, as kind of an opportunity to hopefully learn from their experience. And then we're going to hear from 4 substance use and addictions research centers here at the University of Washington. So here's where that alphabet soup comes in. So we'll hear first from the Addictions, Drug, and Alcohol Institute, or ADAI. Then we will hear from the Center for the Study of Health and Risk Behaviors, or CSHRB. Next will be the Harm Reduction Research and Treatment Center, or the HaRRT Center. And then the Center of Excellence in Neurobiology of Addiction, Pain, and Emotions, or the NAPE Center. Then we will give folks an opportunity to join different breakout rooms with the centers to just touch base and ask any more questions that you have, obviously completely voluntary. And then you all are free to close and leave on your own, and we won't come back after the breakout rooms. All right, so just a quick kind of introduction to the different types of research opportunities at University of Washington, and a shout out to Brittany for her slides, Dr. Holgren. So there are a whole bunch of different types of opportunities. So one is getting different kinds of credits. Often, I know in psychology or psychiatry, these can be 499 credits, and they're also available in other departments. Another common way is through volunteering, work study positions through the university. Sometimes certain majors can offer honor student research opportunities, which come with requirements. There are some part-time and full-time positions, and especially in this day and age for Zoom, these can sometimes be both remote or local. You also can be able to find summer institutes or internships. And then there are fellowships available for undergraduates and postbacks through NIH or other kinds of diversity supplements. And so there are different kinds of websites throughout the University of Washington, which I'll go through in a second, that can help connect you with some of these opportunities. And while they vary from institution to institution, sometimes you can kind of look up these different types of terms at different universities or colleges to try to find what might be local for you. So to kind of dive in a little bit more, so an example of taking a 4 credit opportunities in order to get research opportunities. So included here, we'll send out these slides is, for example, undergraduate research opportunities through psychology. And so sometimes it can be helpful to check in with your registrar's office for credit options. Again, I know I started as a 499 through psychology, which was a really great opportunity because then I got to know a research lab, which in addition to starting to learn the research world, I also got to network and meet new people, and they got to know me too. And I know that the next job that I got, which was a paid research position, was largely because they saw that I had that experience as a student. So this is a website for work study opportunities, or the financial aid office can be another opportunity for job postings or options. So for example, also the University of Washington jobs website, you can kind of search in for different types of disciplines to try to connect with opportunities that might be available here or elsewhere. The undergrad research program, so this is more broader at the University of Washington, and so to try to connect with other types of majors. They also offer some summer institutes as an opportunity to get experience with research. And again, in addition to the skills all of these can kind of provide you with, again, it's just really trying to build up and meet folks who already work in the field, who might be able to help informally or formally mentor you throughout the process. I know when I was an undergraduate, working with a graduate student as well as faculty was super helpful with helping me to pursue kind of my next steps in my careers, whatever they might look like. And then there are those part and full-time positions. And so the link to this website is through the University of Washington. But as I've lived in the Seattle area, or depending on where you live, you can check out and Google different types of colleges and universities that are in your geographical region or remote if you're open to it, and then looking at their job listings to try to find paid opportunities. And recognizing that there's a whole lot of pros and cons with each of these different types of opportunities. Obviously, ideally, paid positions are great. Not all of us can afford to provide free labor, and that can make it much more challenging to break into the field. But obviously that those are going to be more competitive and fewer and far between. So here are just some experiences from other undergraduates about getting involved in research and some of the things that they found helpful. So for example, being an RA or research assistant, I've become more familiar with the research procedure in a more practical field, as well as recognize the future career and graduate program that I'm looking forward to. So again, it's getting those skills, but also kind of laying the roadmap. being able to hear somebody who applied to grad schools, what that was like, as well as what their career options look like. There can be so many options at this point. From Rafa, I was able to improve my communication skills, as well as manage my time effectively to get the tasks done that I was assigned. I found this rewarding because I thought I had good communication and time management skills in the past, but after becoming an RA, a research assistant, I was forced to reflect on myself and my actions and apply what I've learned to improve the overall quality of my work and contribute more to the study. And then from Victoria, as an RA, I've gained experience with several components involved with conducting research, such as data collection, data analysis, survey creation, the use of psychometric scales. I also have had the time to conduct literature reviews, strengthen my personal research interests, and prepare myself for graduate school. So some of it, just kind of pulling out some of those things that I was talking about, as well as that we saw from those quotes. So the first is learning those skills. So some of the types of skills that you could learn through these research opportunities is conducting literature reviews. So how do I synthesize a whole lot of information and build up my own critical thinking skills in order to better understand what research has already been done out there? And this is a great kind of formal way to do that. You also might have the opportunity to help with participant recruitment, which helps build communication and organization skills, as well as creativity. It's also really nice to have that face-to-face interactions with folks or virtually. Could also get data management and analyses experience, as well as enriching scientific thinking. It can also help you explore career options. There's a seemingly endless amount of career options out there. And by getting your feet wet in these different types of things, you can try to see if this is going to be right for you. And whether that's research or going into faculty, becoming a clinical psychologist or social worker, maybe working as a programmer or in the local or state public health sectors. Finally, you could receive that career development and mentoring. I got a lot of help with my resume and curriculum vitae writing, which I didn't even know how to do at that time, but having somebody who could sit down and help me and go through that was invaluable. Again, applying to graduate school, there's lots of books out there and videos and YouTubes and all sorts of things on applying to graduate school, but it's just so different to sit down with somebody who's gone through it and be able to ask a lot of those nitty-gritty questions that sometimes those books don't even talk about. And then how do you even present research? And so again, just really having that hands-on mentoring experience that will set people up for pursuing graduate school and beyond. So it also helps with contacting the principal investigators out there. So contacting faculty members or staff about research opportunities can be a great way to work on a project that is a good fit for you or learn a skill that you're interested in. So again, just my own journey, I took a class in psychology on drugs and behavior, got really interested in that field of work, reached out to a researcher at the University of Washington and started working in their lab. And so happened to find a subject that I was really interested in, but being able to go from classroom to research was really a nice trajectory for myself. So to kind of hear a little bit more about another perspective, Rihanna, thank you so much for presenting.
Hi, thank you for passing it over. Hi folks, my name is Rihanna. I she, they pronouns. I currently work as a project manager with Mandy, Dr. Mandy Owens, on one of her projects where we work with law enforcement and people who have lived and living experience with substance use. So just to kind of give you a little overview of how I came to work at UW and my background in research. So I'm originally from New York, and I didn't learn that research was an opportunity that students can get involved in until my end of second year actually, when my faculty reached out to me to ask if I was interested in joining her lab. I was like, what's a lab? What do you do? So that's kind of how it started. Unfortunately, since I was transferring institutions, I wasn't able to work with that faculty. But from there, I realized that that was an opportunity. So at my new institution, I joined a program that's called McNair program, which UW also has, which is basically a program that if you're interested in applying to graduate school, it provides you with research and graduate school training opportunities. So that's a great way to also kind of get involved if you want a more structured way as well. But I got involved in the McNair program, which paired me with a mentor, and that's how I started my undergraduate research experience. And after graduating, I also joined a summer research program at NYU New York University, where I worked with a mentor for the summer and got to work with more PhD students in their lab and kind of try out different research topics in their lab as well. And from there, since I'm interested in applying to graduate school, but I felt that I was still lacking some certain skills that I needed to feel more confident in the application process. I did a post-baccalaureate training program, which I did in Indiana University for the past year. So a post-baccalaureate program is for students who already finished their 4-year education as an undergrad and who are looking for kind of a 1-year cushion to help them build more research experience and training and feel comfortable in applying to graduate school, whether that be PhD or master's. So that's another great way for students who might be like more seniors who feel like they didn't have enough experience in undergraduate. That's another great opportunity as well. And then I finished that program, and now I'm here working as a staff at UW. So that's kind of how I went from different institutions and different types of research opportunities or programs. So kind of going off of a little bit of what Mandy said with how to find opportunities, I think she covered most of what I was going to say. But I think when you're first kind of learning about research or getting interested in pursuing psychology or public health, etc., a great way is obviously going with people who are close to you, so faculty or a professor that you're in a class with, that you enjoy their class, you enjoy their presence, you enjoy going to their office hours. I think that's a great way to kind of get connected and started. And obviously they're a great resource in general, even if you don't, if their lab isn't available, you can ask how you can get involved, if they know any faculty who have similar research experiences that you can get involved with. So I think getting in contact with faculty or professors that you're in class with, or you might have, run across, in a different setting that is a great way to start. If you're going into your junior or senior year, again, taking classes that are CAPSTA, research focus is a great way as well, where you can get credit. Also using opportunities like this, reaching out to research centers, like the Office of Undergraduate Research or, ADAI, specific research centers within your institution is another great way. Going a little more outside of your institution. So UW is, if you're currently an undergrad, these are mostly for sophomore and junior students, but there's a lot of summer opportunities for research. So if you're open to working with other faculty at different institutions or maybe traveling during the summer, which is a great way, which is also covered most of the times, there's things that are called Summer Undergraduate Research Programs, so SERP, and also Research Experience for Undergraduate, which is acronym the REU. Those are pretty major research opportunities that a lot of the institutions have during the summer, where you get mentoring, research experience, get connected, and they also give you a lot of professional development trainings, and you get to stay in different campuses as well. So that's another great opportunity to kind of see other places. If you are interested in graduate school, opportunity to see other institutions, other environments. So that's another great way. Also utilizing, nonprofits, especially with substance use research. There's certain nonprofits or hospital settings or certain government agencies that do a lot of those research as well. So that's another great way. And in general, right now, there's a lot of information around on the internet. So utilizing different websites, even social media, especially Twitter. There's a lot of available information on Twitter. When I was searching for jobs as a staff, I think a lot of the jobs that I found were on Twitter as well, or LinkedIn. Indeed sometimes as well. So utilizing those kind of like tech savvy information can also get you information that you might not be able to find through direct contact with people. So those are some of the ways that I kind of like used my network and resources to find opportunities. And like one advice that also I would like to share, going through different experiences and also knowing a lot of people who went through experiences with research and are graduate students now. If this is your first time getting involved in research or labs, don't get too focused on what they study. Obviously, if you can, that's my personal advice. Obviously, if you have a lab or faculty that you adore what they do, and this is like, oh, I'm so interested in this, and you can get involved with it, that's great. But if there's a faculty who that you like in person and they want to work with you, but their interest isn't particularly something that you want to do maybe long term, still give it a try. I know a lot of people who tried something and they ended up liking it, or they tried it and said, this is a great opportunity. Now I know how to, do analysis. I know how to do lit reviews, but I'm just going to take this skills and take it to a different lab. So don't get too focused, because sometimes with certain interests, it can be a little harder to find. And obviously, there's things that you want to do and there's availability as well. So kind of being realistic in that is also, I think, important in my perspective. Yeah.
That was fantastic. Thank you so much. And I'm also so grateful for your journey across the country and into
East Coast to the West Coast.
And what great advice too. And Rihanna will be hanging around the breakout rooms if folks have questions afterwards. Otherwise, I will pass things to Susan.
Great. Thank you very much, Mandy. So hi, everyone. It's great to see so many folks that joined us today that are interested in hearing about addiction research and sort of career paths in addiction. Like what I think you're going to start hearing a theme where just like the two speakers before me, I also joined a research lab when I was an undergrad, and that was a really formative experience for me and started me on my career trajectory in addiction work. My name is Susan Ferguson. I'm the director of ADAI. I'm also a professor in the Department of Psychiatry and Behavioral Sciences, which is where ADAI is located. I'm going to focus my presentation on the work that's actually happening at ADAI, but I did want to mention that I'm also one of the principal investigators in the NAPE Center. So I have a PhD in neuroscience by training, and I run a basic science research lab there where you can hear my dog in the background, or at least I can hear her. But we studied the cells and circuits that regulate substance use and substance use disorders using animal models. And we have some opportunities open in my lab. So I'm happy to talk with you about the work that we're doing, as well as those opportunities offline. Just feel free to contact me. And since Rihanna mentioned a postdoc program, I'll put in a plug for our NAPE Center also has a postdoc program. So if you particularly are not at UW and are looking to kind of build up your research resume and are close to graduating, that could be a great opportunity for you for next year. Okay, so I'm going to tell you what we are at ADAI. So we're a group of about 45 faculty, staff, and trainees with a wide range of backgrounds of education and skill sets. And we sort of come together to address our primary mission, which is to advance research, policy, and practice to improve the lives of individuals and communities affected by alcohol and drug use, as well as addiction. So like I said, I'm going to kind of highlight some of the research that's going on in our different groups within ADAI, but we also do a lot of education, outreach, and training. And so I'll touch on that briefly, just to kind of give you a sense a bit about, career and what else you do besides research in this field. And then we also have a small grants program where we give pilot funding to researchers across the UW that are interested in addiction work. And just threw up the website here because I think one of the best ways to kind of get to know what's going on a little bit more deeply is just spending some time on the website. Okay, so we have about 5 main groups within ADAI. And so I'm going to tell you very briefly about each of those. The first one is our Cannabis Education and Research Program, which is headed by Dr. Bia Carlini. It's called CSHRB. And the research that's being conducted in this program is really around current topics of interest around legalized cannabis and how it relates to addiction. In particular, they're very focused right now on high potency THC cannabis products and the implications of those. So one of the studies they just finished conducting was a concept mapping study to look at public health concerns around high THC cannabis. And this is actually has been able to be used to help inform some policy decisions in Washington state. They also just completed a study looking at the adverse effects of cannabis, looking at Washington Poison Center calls that were coming in. In addition, Bia's group also does a lot of education and information dissemination through websites, through trainings. Dr. Sackett is not at ADAI. He's in the psychiatry department with us, and we would be more than happy to connect you with him. He's a colleague of all of ours. Sorry, I was just checking the chat. That was a chat question. So let's see. Our next center I wanted to highlight was CDER. It's probably our biggest center within ADAI. It's the Center for Community Engaged Drug Education, Epidemiology, and Research. Mandy's part of this center. It's headed by Dr. Caleb Banta-Green. And the work really focuses mostly on opioids and stimulants. And they do a lot of work, as you can kind of see here. They do health services research. They evaluate new models of care. They look at local drug use trends, look at the data and how that's changing, do research on that and monitor and publish studies around that. They identify and disseminate current best practices in clinical care, as well as public health and educational strategies related to opioids and stimulants. They also do a lot of education and training, as is sort of a theme here at ADAI, where we're doing both the research and then the dissemination work. Currently in CDER, there are 3 graduate students, and their projects are kind of focused on conducting surveys and interviews with people who use drugs to then collect this community level data that they can do research on. Okay, the other group I wanted to highlight, the third group, is part of a NIDA clinical trials network. So the network is across the country. We are part of the Pacific Northwest node of that network, and it's headed by Dr. Mary Hatch at UW. And then she also has a colleague at WSU, Dr. John Roll, who's the co-PI on this grant. And so these are researchers here at UW and WSU that are working with community partners in our larger WWAMI area, as well as in Northern California, to do a host of things around trying to improve quality and outcomes of drug addiction treatments. And so I'm showing you just a few of the current projects that are happening within the Clinical Trials Network, or what we call the CTN. One of those, for example, is looking at why are people discontinuing their buprenorphine treatment in the VA system. Buprenorphine is a medical treatment for opioid use disorder. Another study that's happening is looking at knowledge of and attitudes about medical assisted treatment within American Indian communities. Another project that they're doing is looking at doing an implementation survey of PrEP and opioid use-related services in sexually transmitted infection clinics, as well as in community-based organizations. And then another project is looking at preventing and identifying opioid use disorder using what's called the 6 building blocks, which is a program that focuses on 6 key areas that are designed to improve patient care. Okay, the next center I want to highlight is our Center for Advancing Addiction Health Services, which is headed by Dr. Brian Hartzler. And in terms of the research side of things, they do a lot of health services research where they're testing implementation strategies for dissemination of clinical practices. Dr. Hartzler's group is particularly interested in something called contingency management, which is basically a program or treatment that offers motivational incentives to try to reduce substance use. And so you can see there's a couple of NIDA-funded projects around this area. One's looking at peer engagement and methamphetamine harm reduction with contingency management. And there's another one looking at implementing contingency management in opioid treatment centers. And then Brian's group also is part of something called the Opioid Response Network, which provides training to different folks, as well as he oversees this Northwest Addiction Technology Transfer Center, which again provides training to support the addiction workforce. And then the final group at ADAI I wanted to highlight is the Fetal Alcohol and Drug Unit, or FADU, which is headed by Dr. Susan Stoner. And the research here is really trying to understand the impacts of fetal alcohol exposure across the lifespan. So they have a really neat study right now. It's a multi-site study examining a host of different things. So mental health, cognition, social behaviors, immune function in adults that were diagnosed with fetal alcohol spectrum disorder as infants or children. And they've been able to follow this cohort as they've grown up and really do this longitudinal study. Susan's group also oversees this parent-child assistance program, which is an intervention for pregnant and parenting moms who use substances during pregnancy and are poorly connected to social services. And so they're trying to basically help those clients achieve and maintain recovery, build healthy family lives, and prevent future fetal drug exposure. And they are able to conduct some research using the program data that they collect. And I know that was a lot of stuff in a short period of time, but hopefully, kind of gives you a broad sense of the different kinds of work that we're doing at ADAI. And if one of those projects I kind of, highlighted kind of sparked your interest, or, oh, I'm really interested in cannabis research, or, exposure to fetal alcohol syndrome, those kinds of things, then feel free to reach out to any of these researchers, or, follow up with us and we can connect you with them and kind of see what their current projects are. And you can take back control, Mandy, and pass it on to the next person.
Sounds good. And thank you, Luna, for your appearances on our presentation tonight. Oh, all right, Scott, you should be able to.
Think so. I just got a notification that I am in control. Good evening, everyone. I'm Scott Groppensberger. I'm an assistant professor. Oh, I lost control.
Oh, no, I'm sorry.
That's okay. Okay, sorry about that, everyone. I'm Scott Groppensberger. I'm an assistant professor in the School of Medicine, Department of Psychiatry and Behavioral Sciences. I specifically work in the Center for the Study of Health and Risk Behavior, which is what I'm here to tell you all about. I'm very encouraged to see such a good turnout. It's really exciting to see all the enthusiasm for getting involved with this research. I can't help but echo what others have said. It's such an awesome opportunity to get involved early. For one thing, just to see if this is a career that you might enjoy, if nothing else, right? So I'm happy to happy to share some opportunities that we have. And I'm first going to just introduce you to our center a little bit more broadly. We do a lot of research that overlaps in some ways with our colleagues over at ADAI. We collaborate with them whenever possible. But we have a bit broader reach, or a bit broader scope of interests. And so maybe next slide. Thank you. Sorry about that. So as our name would imply, we study a broad range of health behaviors. And so some examples here, basically just to try to improve people's health behaviors, engagement in healthy behaviors, while also trying to target risk behaviors. So next slide, please. So a lot of our research is funded by national agencies that are interested in risk behaviors, but we try to view this from both sides of the coin, right? So we're trying to increase healthy behaviors while also decreasing risk behaviors. And a lot of our research is funded by the NIAAA, which is the National Institute on Alcohol Abuse and Alcoholism, as well as the National Institute on Drug Abuse. So that is our big focus, but we also have researchers in our center studying a wide variety of things, such as gambling, sports betting, traumatic experiences, sexual health behaviors, etc. So what I'm going to try to do today is give you a little bit of an overview of a lot of different things. And I don't claim to know everything about each of my colleagues' ongoing studies, but I will try to just share with you quickly about it. And then if you want to hop into the breakout room at the end, and I'll be glad to make connections for you. Next slide.
You still don't have control?
I'm not sure. There we go. Was that me?
Sure was.
Control. Okay. All right. So broadly speaking, we like to view our research generally approaches these health and risk behaviors from a multi-level perspective. So starting with those influences that are most close to us, such as our friends, our perceived norms about those around us, the situations where we live, work, and recreate, and also just like things like social support in our lives. And building out from there, we know that our health and risk behaviors are influenced by a wide variety of things outside of our individual circles. So this relates more to like local systems and services such as housing, availability of substances or other risk behaviors, barriers to accessing health behaviors, and even things like the neighborhoods that you live and grow up in. And then finally, at the broadest level, researchers in our center are also studying these high-level social factors such as racism and colonialism, historical trauma to certain marginalized groups, and also things like policy such as housing and economic laws. So I think a good starting point for us is to talk about our 7 directions, which is it's a center within a center. It's a center that is focused on Indigenous public health. It's led by Mara Parker and her colleagues. And they are just the best in the business. They focus on supporting tribal and urban Indian public health efforts, and most recently, I think, specifically focusing on opioids in these communities. And so they are looking for 499s, work study programs, volunteers. So if this is something that calls to you, please check out their website. I'll try to pause for just a second so you can put your phones out and take a picture of a slide that might interest you. Otherwise, like I said, just touch base with me at the end. Another study that's been going on for a couple of years now is the Decisions During Drinking study, also known as the D3, led by Dr. Brittany Holgren. And this project aims to understand young adults' decisions while they drink and develop an electronic program for young adults to have more positive outcomes if and when they do decide to drink. So that I think the focus here is not necessarily focusing on abstinence from drinking, but just trying to increase ways of making better decisions while young adults are drinking. The next study I want to talk to you about is the HaRRT study, Health Education for Youth. This is led by Dr. Jessica Blaney. And this is a study that's developing a sex-positive STI and HIV prevention program for young women ages 15 to 18. And so I pulled this slide from their Instagram, or this image here, and they're really creative with their marketing. And so I really enjoy all the posts that I see from them. But this one says, sex education doesn't just happen in schools. And they actually take a fairly different approach to sex education. Like I said, I know just a little bit about it, but from what I can tell, it's really interesting. It's definitely more on the harm reduction side of things, which we always love to see. So they as well are looking for 499 research assistants, volunteers. Getting involved in this lab would give you opportunities for personalized training goals. Jess is an absolutely wonderful mentor. She really cares for all of her mentees, and we all do. But I've seen Jess go above and beyond, and getting involved in studies like this give you these experiences, but also just that strong relationship with a mentor who can help guide you to where you're going. All right, the next study is Increasing Resilience from Alcohol-Related Harms study. And this is led by Dr. Jessica Canning, a postdoc in our lab. And this study is focusing on identifying themes for ways to improve alcohol screening, prevention, and interventions with transgender and non-binary community members. So if this is something that calls to you, that you're passionate about or interested in, I think this would be a great fit. Also looking for 499s and volunteer involvement. And RAs in this lab will get to assist with recruiting participants, helping retain participants throughout the life of the study, and transcribing and coding focus group data. So that's actually going to be like interview level data that you'll get your hands on and code into more meaningful. You'll just basically code it into something that we can make meaning from. So if this is of interest to you, be sure to reach out to Dr. Canning. Next study is Project Relate, a new study just funded by Dr. Catherine Wallachevich-Dienst. And so they're recruiting young adult couples. So this is actually dyadic data. And they're studying daily level associations between alcohol and cannabis use and relationship functioning. So a great opportunity to get involved in data looking at how your significant other or your partner can influence your health and risk behaviors and your general satisfaction in your relationships. So also looking for 499s and volunteers. And because it's early stage, this would be an opportunity to help program and test online surveys, conduct virtual trainings with participants, and then creating online ads, things of that nature. The next is the Neighborhood Health and Disparities Study. This is actually led by a PhD student, Chelsea Mackey. And so this gets at one of those higher level constructs, is like the neighborhoods you grow up in, the neighborhoods you live in. And this the study aims to understand relationships between neighborhood characteristics, the role of drinking motives on alcohol consumption, and consequences among Black adults. RAs in this study are going to help Chelsea with screening and scheduling participants, performing literature reviews, piloting materials, analyzing qualitative data, so data that comes from interviews or similar ways, and developing research protocols and manuscript preparation. So if you're interested in minority health or disparities research, Chelsea Mackey is a rising star and highly recommended. The YAS study, another one by Dr. Jessica Blaney, similar to the HAYS study. This is young adult health education, or young adult education on alcohol and health. Again, taking a sex positive program to reduce alcohol and sexual risks for young women ages 18 to 24. This one I don't believe to be a qualitative study so much as it is actually testing an intervention. This is a really cool program that they've developed. They actually refer to it as a journey. So they sign these young adult women up to, it's a clinical trial at the core, but it's assigned to the treatment group, actually go on what they call a journey, and they teach them all kinds of skills that are tackling the intersection between sexual risk behaviors and substance use. So really exciting stuff. Project Self. So this is a study that's investigating potential cognitive mechanisms that underlie hazardous drinking in young adults during their transition out of high school. And so it's not just those who are transitioning into college, though we know that is a relatively high-risk population. This is helping young adults navigate any sort of change that they have after high school and navigating it in a way that reduces harm relative to substance use and other risk behaviors that young adults are prone to. And then a quick plug for one of my own studies. So we are exploring social norms of hazing, bystander intervention, and health risk behaviors of fraternity men. And so this is a large survey-based study. We're going to be testing examining what are the most salient influences on fraternity members' perceived social norms regarding hazing behaviors, bystander intervention, so behaviors that we can all engage in to help with a situation that might be going south, and then other related health behaviors that are problematic or that we see in fraternity men. And so RAs on this project are going to help us. Again, it's just getting off the ground, so always fun to be a part of something from the beginning, just to kind of see how a project comes together. But we're going to help our research coordinator with participant recruitment engagement, also with data collection, and then also the exciting part, disseminating those findings, making meaning out of the data we collect. And then the last study I wanted to highlight is a dissertation study from one of the PhD students that works with us, Victoria Szyslowski. And so she's studying something that I know very little about, but I'm really excited about, microdosing with hallucinogens and psychedelics. She's studying this among college students in particular. So if this is something that interests you, this sort of like microdosing on low levels of very low doses of hallucinogens and psychedelics, there's really exciting work going on by Victoria. And the last thing I want to do, I know we moved really fast, but the last thing I want to do is plug our own virtual research open house that we're having next week, actually. So if any of these sounded interesting, pretty much all of the researchers that I was just highlighting will be in attendance at this open house next week. So you can find the information for that on our Twitter account. I saw we just tweeted about it earlier today or yesterday. And it'll be similar to this. I think you'll have a more opportunity to interact with a lot of the researchers who are actively hiring. All right, so I would give up control if I knew how.
Thank you, Scott. Let me stop and pass that over to Tessa.
All right, I think I got it. Hi, everyone. Great to see your names. My name is Dr. Tessa Froh, and I am an acting assistant professor here at the University of Washington. I just want to start by thanking Mandy and the rest of the ADAI team for putting this all together and for these awesome slides. I really love how they look, like the templates. So today I'm just going to be talking to you about the Harm Reduction Research and Treatment, or HaRRT Center, which was co-founded by my two primary mentors, Drs. Susan Collins and Seema Klipasefi. And our HaRRT team is made up of people who use drugs and have lived experience of chronic homelessness, as well as residents, staff, and management of supportive housing facilities, and faculty, staff, and students here from the University of Washington. So to start, I just want to give a little background about the population who we primarily work with. It's mostly people who have lived experience of chronic homelessness as well as substance use disorders. And to be considered, chronically homeless, it's when someone has been unhoused for at least 1 year, as well as struggling with a serious mental illness, substance use disorder, or other physical disability. And we know that people experiencing homelessness are disproportionately affected by substance-related morbidity and mortality. So traditionally, people with substance use disorders who were experiencing homelessness were required to first attend treatment and achieve abstinence before they could obtain housing. But although these requirements were meant to be motivating, instead they tend to serve as barriers to housing attainment, relegating people who, may not be ready, willing, or able to stop using their substances immediately to continued homelessness. So a contrasting model to this traditional abstinence-based model is Housing First. So Housing First offers permanent supportive housing and is more recovery-oriented, which really focuses on reducing substance-related harms and improving health-related quality of life. So Seattle has a large permanent supportive housing network, and among others, I should say, the Downtown Emergency Service Center, or DESC, is who we primarily partner with. And the DESC is a nonprofit organization. Today they have 18 permanent supportive housing sites around the greater Seattle area, and they house over 1,300 people. And since I've joined the HaRRT Center, we primarily work with these, pictured here on the right on the map, and pictured are just a couple of the houses that we go to. So in this work, the HaRRT Center's main mission has really been to conduct research that's inclusive of the community's voice, and we've been using a community-based participatory research, or CBPR, framework, and it really just focuses on topics of importance to the community. So we ensure that we involve community stakeholders, starting with the research design all the way through implementation, just to ensure that those unique strengths are combined with, the knowledge of the community in order to attain that achieve action that we're focusing on. So over the years, the HaRRT Center has been utilizing this framework and has been working with community stakeholders to co-create what we like to call a toolbox of interventions, all of which are based on harm reduction principles. And so when we say harm reduction, we just really mean kind of an alternative pathway to recovery by combining compassion with pragmatism. So harm reduction is low threshold, an approach that meets individuals where they're at and centers on what they want to see happen for themselves without requiring abstinence or any substance use reduction. And so through empirically testing these interventions that the HaRRT Center has co-developed, we've learned that our harm reduction treatment, or HaRRT as we like to call it, really helps people to decrease their substance-related harms and improve their overall quality of life. So all of these interventions thus far have been tested within the communities, which they were designed for over the years, and they work well in person. But as everyone can guess, when COVID hit, it really, really impacted the ability that the HaRRT Center had to work in the community and made us realize just how many digital barriers within the housing first sites that there were. So we noticed that there was a lack of ready means for remote communication among residents, both within the building wide level as well as individually. And all current forms of communication obviously have come with some type of associated barriers. So this really got me thinking, you know, like how can we work with this with the community that we, you know, seek to serve? And I joined the HaRRT Center in August 2020. And really, I've been taking the lead on expanding our toolbox into very low barrier remote services in order to ensure that, you know, we're trying to keep the health equity up among people who don't have access to technology as easily as the general population. But to date, there's really little to no work done on tailoring any digital health services to marginalized populations. And there's really very few digital harm reduction treatments available, and none are tailored for people who have lived experience of homelessness. So I am in the process of currently finishing up this study of supporting technology use and harm reduction, or the STAR study. We're wrapping up recruitment and going to be really focusing on our qualitative analyses, which is just focusing on digital literacy levels of housing first residents, as well as their perspectives on barriers and facilitators to using this technology. And we're really just aiming to optimize implementation strategies for technology use uptake among housing first residents. And with that, once we've kind of got that qualitative piece taken care of, we're going to be using the STAR study to inform and adapt our in-person HaRRT or harm reduction treatment into a remote platform that can be delivered to residents within the housing first frameworks by what we're calling kind of like a telehealth station. So we're going to be co-developing that with our community members in order to ensure that we're centering the voices of the people who will be using these digital platforms. And so those are the two main studies that I have been leading. And in addition to that, we have several ongoing studies by my mentors, Seema and Susan. And we'll start by focusing on Susan's. One thing I didn't mention with Dr. Collins is that she's affiliated with WSU also and is physically in Spokane, but is still a full-time professor and clinical psychologist here at the University of Washington. So the two primary studies that she oversees are the HaRRT-C and the CHARM-CN. So both are 5-year NIH or National Institutes of Health funded grants. And the HaRRT-C is focused on integrating harm reduction treatment with the Native tradition of talking circles in order to provide more culturally appropriate and community developed treatment for alcohol use disorder. And then the CHARM-CN is focused on medication for opioid use disorder and looking to really orient that more towards harm reduction in order to improve program retention and reduce substance-related harms. So then coming back over to the other side of the mountain with Dr. Cliff-Sefi, she has the Life Enhancing Alcohol Management, or LEAP study, and that is focused on a 10-site cluster randomized control trial, so focused on different DESC houses. Some received the LEAP intervention, and we're just seeing if the LEAP impacts substance use, health, cost, and service utilization, as well as quality of life over the course of a 1-year period. And just to give you a little bit more in-depth understanding of the LEAP, we have different in-person activities that we do. So typically we do things like community lunches, music and art events, as well as attending other ongoing community events. And we really and we also focus on art hours. So we have a meaningful activities coordinator who holds weekly art groups at different houses, and also holds come as you are groups, we call them. So just focused on harm reduction, treatment, talking to people about goals and what they want to see happen for themselves in the coming weeks. And then finally, all of the artwork that residents do at these art groups or otherwise, they're able to submit these, and we publish or print quarterly zine or just community magazines, which really showcase the resident artwork. And then we host community zine release parties at different DESC houses over the course of the time, just to share other residents' artwork and offer an opportunity for folks to come together and just see what everyone's been working on. So that's my very quick overview of the HaRRT Center. I just want to thank everyone who makes this work happen, and as well as all of you for attending. This is my email. I'll also put it in the chat, so feel free to reach out and ask questions if you would like to learn more about the HaRRT Center.
Thanks, Tessa.
Thank you.
I hope as we're going along, you all are having some of the similar takeaways that I am. One is the study acronym game that you all have going on. I am very impressed. And then hopefully folks are not feeling overwhelmed with the amount of great work happening here. But hopefully things are starting to catch your eyes and also can start to be kind of expanding what this work could look like, in case you're interested in something. So I will pass things over to you, Kevin, and you should have slide control.
How's it going? Let's give it a shot if I just click. Or, oh, I see slide control next. Cool. So I'm Kevin Coffey, and as of 7 days ago now, I'm a research assistant professor here at the University of Washington. I am a behavioral neuroscientist, so a little different. What that means basically is that I train rats and mice to do drugs and then study their brains. Getting into that sort of field is a little strange, but I basically started out in undergrad as a struggling computer scientist, and was kind of very lucky to get introduced to research through a friend. And it turned out that computer science was a really valuable tool to have in research. And so I actually stayed in my undergrad lab to do my PhD, and then searched for a postdoc position out here on the West Coast because I really wanted to move west. I think that's a really cool thing about research. If you stick with the track, you get an opportunity to kind of choose to move around at a couple points if you want to try out a new space to live. And yeah, for the last 7 years, I've been here at UW, learning new skills and how to hopefully be a good PI. And the psychiatry department gave me an offer just recently. So my lab is down at the VA in Beacon Hill. There's actually a lot of really interesting research going down there at the VA. It can be a little tough for undergrads, but we managed to get quite a few people in and doing research down there. So in particular, if going to Beacon Hill is not a huge problem for you, there are some really interesting labs down there you can check out. And what I'm primarily working on right now is studying oral fentanyl self-administration in rodent models. So I don't think I need to tell everyone here that the fentanyl epidemic has really been kind of raging out of control, particularly the last few years. I feel like I show this figure a lot, and every year I have to kind of keep drawing the line farther and farther up. There just doesn't seem to be any slowdown here. And so, I'll be the first to admit that solving the fentanyl crisis is going to take a lot of work, kind of changing societal structures and healthcare and all the things that, like ADAI is really interested in. But as a behavioral neuroscientist, I still want to kind of do my part. And so what we do is we develop preclinical rodent models to try to look at what are the long-term consequences to the brain after chronic fentanyl use or drug use, and kind of what are the predictive features in individuals that can predict escalation of drug use or really problematic drug use. So the biggest project I have now is, like I said, this oral fentanyl self-administration model. We've basically developed a rodent model of fentanyl use, abstinence, and relapse. And this is the kind of thing that undergrads get to run regularly in labs like ours. So you work with animals, you train them. I apologize. I am a member of the NAPE Center. So the NAPE Center has a lot of sorry, I'm answering a question in the chat too. A lot of basic scientists that do some really interesting behavioral and neurophysiological work in addiction. So yeah, we develop these models. We ask interesting questions about kind of the decision making to do drugs. So, as cost changes, are animals making adaptive or maladaptive decisions? And then the other thing we're really interested in now is individual differences. So the kind of like leading way everyone from the neuroscience field would go after addiction is, what do drugs do to the brain? Do they hijack certain parts of the brain? But what we're really interested in now is, are there predictors of escalated drug use? And this model captures that really well in males and females. And then I don't remember how much time we have here, but I'm just gonna go really quick over one other thing we're interested in. So I don't know if a lot of people here know this, but rats and mice are very vocal creatures, and they talk to each other all the time, but their vocalizations are way above the human hearing range. And so we've developed some software, some kind of AI-based software to detect and analyze these things. And the reason it's so helpful in the drug abuse world is because rats in particular have these two kinds of vocalizations that are related to positive and negative affect. And what we're able to do with this is look at at what periods of time during the cycle of addiction are animals experiencing positive affect, and which times are they experiencing negative affect. And that's really useful when going after changes in the brain, or periods of time where, say, stress or other things are really motivating to promote relapse. Yeah, I think that's probably enough for me. If you're interested in kind of the behavioral neuroscience side of things, yeah, stick around.
Thank you. Passing over to you, Lydia.
Awesome, sweet. Hi, I'm Lydia Gorn-Pinnell. My pronouns are she, hers. I'm a neuroscience grad student in the PhD program here at UW, currently working in Paul Phillips's lab, which is also part of the NAPE Center. So I first kind of just wanted to go a little bit about my career path to substance use disorder research, which I think is like pretty similar to what we've been hearing so far. So I went to undergrad in 2015 at the University of Texas at Austin, where I majored in neuroscience. Was very lucky to be able to have a program that had like a major in neuroscience at that time, but it's becoming much more frequent now. And even going into that, like I was interested in doing research, but also was very aware that I had little to no idea what research was. Like I just had my high school like physics labs, which I kind of actually hated. So I wasn't really sure if that was like a great path for me. So I tried to get into an experience as quickly as possible. And for me, that was in an undergrad ran research lab at UT called Bioactive Molecules, which was actually an organic chemistry synthesis lab. So not quite like an ideal research interest for me, but kind of how I think Rand was talking about earlier, it's just like a good way to get my foot in the door of learning some like wet lab techniques in general, and to kind of see if research itself is something I was interested in, which it was. And so then I went from there and basically just like cold emailed some faculty that I kind of was interested in their projects. They had guest lectured and I thought they seemed like a really good teacher, and therefore I thought they might be a really good mentor. So yeah, I just kind of like cold emailed them, and that's how I got into my position in the Marinelli lab, which was a faculty lab at UT Austin doing neural circuitry of substance use disorder. research. So after all that in undergrad, like having these research experiences, I wanted to go to grad school and kind of looked for programs that had behavioral neurosciences. That's what I was primarily interested in, which is what brought me to UW, where I started my PhD here in 2020. As is with most programs, specifically in neuroscience and particularly in the United States, you rotate in various labs to kind of, see which lab might be the best fit for you. And then ultimately I decided to do my PhD in Paul Phillips's lab, or the PEMP lab, where I'm currently studying neuromodulation of reward circuitry in the progression of substance use disorder-like behaviors using rodent models. So very similar to what Kevin is doing as well. So kind of just a little bit more of what studying neuromodulation of reward circuitry and the progression of SUD behaviors using rodent models means. Kind of had this little graphic here. And I think we've kind of talked about how, you have this, can have casual drug use and then can lead into, in some individuals, this more substance use disorder like drug consumption. And for me, I'm particularly interested in the escalation of drug use as being a type of phenotype that's seen in substance use disorder in humans. And so I'm interested in that progression of behavior that goes from less risky drug consumption to more risky drug consumption. And as neuroscientists, and particularly behavioral neuroscientists, we believe that behavioral changes are underlied by neural changes. So I'm trying to figure out what are those neural changes that are happening that's causing this behavioral change, in the hopes that that could pinpoint out future therapeutic targets for substance use disorder. Sorry. So I just want to highlight a few different aspects of why I kind of led to this choice of studying SUD and why I think that it might be of interest to people. So I was first off in undergrad interested in neural circuitry of behavior, which is really broad, but was a good starting point, and then learned this idea of understanding systems from both a diseased and non-diseased state that can be a really powerful tool in a lot of different research settings to be able to look at a system in both of these states to help you understand what's going on. As well as what was mentioned before is the ability to model substance use disorder in non-human species. So there's a wide variety of disorders and things that you can study in research, but not all of them can be modeled in non-human species. But it is generally believed that at least some components of substance use disorder does really well for modeling in non-human species, which gives you a lot more ability to do a lot more different kind of experiments than you could if you were restricted just to using humans. I also really love the translatability and expansiveness of the fields, kind of how we've seen already that people work from lots of different angles, down from working just on pharmacology and C. elegans or worms, up to humans. And I also think it's really accessible for outreach work, which I am really passionate about outreach and public science education. And I think substance use disorder is a really easy entry point for that, because most people are familiar with it. They are either been affected themselves or know someone, or just generally have an idea of it. So it's a really easy access point for a lot of engagement and outreach work, which is really exciting, as well as obviously being an incredibly important thing to have outreach work and public science education for. So lastly, I kind of just wanted to outline what does neuroscience substance use disorder research look like for me, every day in the lab, when I go to work, what does that mean? So similarly, I work with rats to model human drug use, and I'm focused on escalation of drug use. So my rats voluntarily take drugs. I specifically study cocaine, so they take cocaine and then through this paradigm escalating their consumption, which is our SUD behavior. And then I perform manipulations on neural circuits to try to figure out, again, what's going on in the brain. And this can look at doing pharmacological manipulations, doing gene editing, using CRISPR, and or just looking at the nervous system through in vivo fluorescence imaging. So basically using light to be able to see when neurons are active or when certain neurotransmitters are around. And then after I perform those manipulations, then I get to observe the resulting behavior and or neural signals during behavior. And then these are just some example graphs of some things that I look at in my everyday day-to-day research, looking at whether their behavior has like stopped escalating based off this manipulation, or being able to see like what this neural activity is like during drug consumption. And I think a lot of this work is also, right, this work is specific to the Phillips lab, but is also like very similar in many ways to a lot of the labs at the NAPE Center. So if you're interested in the idea of like basic science behind substance use disorder, neural circuitry of substance use disorder, I think any lab in the NAPE Center would be probably like a great choice. Thanks.
All right. Well, thank you so much to all of our presenters. So before we move on to the last portion, I know that was a lot of information, so we're gonna pop up a quick poll just to kind of gauge folks' reactions to that. You know, as I mentioned, this is our 3rd annual open house, and we're always looking to improve it. And so if you just take a quick second to answer those questions, that'd be very much appreciated. Just looking through the chat. Sorry, I couldn't see direct messages. Yes, we will be sending out a recording of this to registrants as well as a copy of the slides.
And one thing one thing I did want to mention to everybody, sort of based on some of the questions, is that basically, if you're interested in someone's research, please reach out to them. And that's probably the best way to find out what research opportunities there might be, if they're paid, if they're volunteer, if you could do it remote, if you have to be a UW student. If not, it's going to be, we don't mean to be vague, but it really is going to be a little bit different for each of the different labs. And so the best thing you can do is just start sort of doing that email network to people and just trying to reach out, and they could maybe connect you with somebody else if they don't have something, and it'll help for us to hear more about what types of the research that we presented today that you're interested in. So CSHRB might have a little bit of a different process than NAPE and HaRRT and that sort of thing. So that's why we're a little bit general in our responses to your questions.
Yeah, and so as we kind of move into the last part, we're going to do breakout rooms. So if you're interested in talking to any of us or hearing more about other folks at our centers, feel free to drop into those breakout rooms. No need to come back together at the end, but feel free to reach out to any of us if you have questions. And otherwise, we just really appreciate you all taking the time to be here with us today. And I'll go ahead and open up those rooms. You should be able to click breakout rooms at the bottom and be able to join, hopefully, whichever rooms that you are interested in. So we hope to see you all there. And Inga, you can stop the recording because we won't record the breakout rooms.
It sounds good. Thanks, Mandy.
Thank you. And sorry I didn't see your direct question. I couldn't see chat.
No, it's all good. It got answered. All right. See you later.
Bye.